the PFL Preview Show.
Mike Pendleton here with SureDog.com and the On the Mic podcast. But you know what time it is. If I'm here with a guest, it is only one thing to worry about on your calendar, and that is the PFL. That's right. This is the PFL Preview Show, PFL Sioux Falls. So as always, I welcome in my good friend, the best man in the business with a microphone. Sorry, Sean O'Connell, Dan Hardy. Dan, look, I mean, you know that I've been trying to keep the backgrounds in the studio. I mean, these are some interesting colors in Sioux Falls. Are you having fun in South Dakota right now?
I'm loving it here. It's a really beautiful place. Everybody's friendly. Everyone smiles and says hello. I've been walking up and down the riverfront as well. I had a walk down yesterday to the falls. It's beautiful to be here, and it feels like a wrestling town. You know what I mean? It feels like they're going to really appreciate Logan Storley coming back to town.
Yeah, definitely, right? The homegrown kid returns home Saturday, May 2nd. Logan Storley back inside Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the Sanford Pentagon. I am so excited for this. You can catch the action on the ESPN app and ESPN2 this weekend. But Dan, the first thing when we were talking as we were getting ready for this, the first thing that I want to jump into is the fact this really feels, and I know we've praised the promotion for all the changes that they've made this year, but this really feels like a traditional MMA card. You've got heavyweights, women's flyweights, men's bantam. I mean, you have a mix of everything. My first question is, how much more challenging does this make your homework going into fight week?
Man, to be honest, this card is so stacked with fighters that I already know anyway that it's updating my pre-research knowledge in the back of my head. It makes my life a lot easier when I know most of the fighters on the card. And I agree with you. We've got, I think almost every weight class covered. We've had a real focus on middleweights. We've had a real focus on bantamweights. But this card is, it's a real good mix. And the other thing as well, slightly biased from my perspective, but we have two PFL Europe champs on this card, main and co-main event, and they're both taking on, without a doubt, their toughest opponent to date, and they've both really, really got good energy coming into this week. So I'm excited to see how the PFL Europe champs, hold up against some of the best guys we've got on the roster.
And I think that's a underrated storyline coming into this as well. I know, your personal experience with PFL Europe and all that. So I know when you're on the broadcast, you have to be unbiased. But what kind of sense of pride as someone who was so heavily involved in putting together all the fights, finding the talent, everything that you did for PFL Europe, do you have even before they step in the cage? Because we know that there was a blueprint for quite some time with the rebranding of the PFL and how the international leagues were going to build up into the global stage. But before these two fighters even step into the smart cage, how happy are you that we're even talking about them at this point?
Look, I'm very, very happy about them. I'm very proud of both of them. It was interesting watching them go through the tournament. I mean, Zendelli. The reason why I signed Florian Zendelli is because he was trained by Peter Sobotta, and Sobotta was on the UFC roster for many, many years. Two times he fought and was released and came back and had a really good run. But just a very, very clever man, a very, very good coach, and just knew anybody coming out of his camp was going to be good. So Florian Zendelli was an easy signing for me. And then to watch him work his way through the tournament and have some real tough opponents in front of him and have to dig deep, very, very impressed with him. And then Chizov on the other side, tried and failed, picked himself up again, had another run at it. And what was lovely about Chizov winning was, not only him realizing his potential and winning the belt and getting the money, but also the satisfaction that he had in himself for failing and getting back on the horse and going again and achieving what he'd set out to do. That's a lesson for anybody in mixed martial arts. It doesn't always go your way. Sometimes you've got to pick yourself up and dust off and go again. And that's been Chizov's story. And I was chatting to our good friend Stets a bit earlier today, and he's been doing all the Fight Week interviews. And the guys were telling me that they had a really interesting moment with Chizov where it was almost like he realized in the moment what he'd achieved, and the fact that he's fighting Gadzi, the fact that he'd been watching Gadzi for so many years, and now he's up against him and he's fighting him. I think Chizov's had a realization this week that he's really achieved what he set out to do when he left school. And that gives these guys a tremendous amount of motivation. I mean, the reality is, look, Logan Storley and Gadzi Rabadonov are absolute assassins. I mean, they are incredibly tough fights for anybody. But the momentum that these PFL Europe guys have got right now, you've got to put them in a competitive position.
And I couldn't agree more. Let's start in the main event here, Dan. I also had the opportunity to talk to both men, and Florim Zendelli is almost excited. And I just real quick, I know we're going to plug your stuff here along this show, throughout this show, but you just had a great tactical breakdown on the PFL Instagram page that I just saw when I opened it this afternoon. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. But the one thing I love the most is I can have a conversation with anyone, but I can't have specific conversations that you can have. And when I talked to Florim Zendelli, he was excited about showing his wrestling. His quote to me was, "I don't have college wrestling. I have mountain wrestling." And that sends a little shiver down my spine because I know what that means. But from your perspective, someone who has been there, done that, been through it all, and seen it all, what is the biggest difference fans will see in the two styles of wrestling?
Well, it is very interesting. I mean, obviously, Logan Storley's an All-American. You know, you expect that folk style wrestling from him that he's been doing his whole career, and he won a world title with it. He's been very, very successful. On the other side, Florim Zendelli, when I talked to him about his wrestling, I was more interested in the style of wrestling because it's very different to what anybody in the US would be experiencing when they're wrestling. You know, he says it's mountain wrestling. A lot of the time, it's done outdoors. They apply like an oil to their skin before they start to wrestle. So there's a lot of grip strength challenge in this style of wrestling. There's a lot of a lot of slick limbs that you're trying to hold on to, which obviously transfers very well into mixed martial arts when people are, they're sweaty and, the fight's gone a little bit deep and you have to dig deep. Florim Zendelli's used to being in the dust and the grit and the dirt trying to wrestle people and control people. And I just think that gives him a strength of mind that whatever happens in the fight, however dirty and difficult it gets, that he's going to be able to thrive. And, you look at his fights, he always comes through some kind of adversity. And I think his toughness is one of the main attributes that he brings into this fight, because Logan Storley, as we know, he's gonna put a wrestling clinic on anybody in front of him. And it requires some toughness to accept that you're going to have to go through the mill a little bit if you're going to get the win. So, Zendelli's in a position where he's going to have to dig deep in this fight, and he's in enemy territory. He's going to be, he's going to be up against the crowd as he's walking out, because Logan Storley's like royalty around here.
Yeah, and Zendelli he just had a bunch of spine-tingling quotes when we talked. He said, I don't care about homes. The cage is my home. I was like, you know what? I'll just see you on fight night, Zendelli. Yeah, listen, I'm not ready I don't want you to punch me through the camera. But also, on the other side, you mentioned the co-main event. And we already know what these two men are capable of. And real quick, before I get to the co-main, I want to ask you one thing. Logan Storley said to me, he said during his time away, we know last year it did not end the way he wanted to. I mean, how good is that Gene to put on the performance that he did against Logan Storley? But Storley, the thing that I took away from my conversation was that he said the thing that he and Robbie Lawler and his team worked on was how to hurt people more. And I guess the simplest question is that all that's been missing from Logan Storley? Is that kill or that hurt or that damage factor that we would love to see?
I think that's a big part of it, especially, currently we've got 3-round fights. He's not fighting for a title, and our main events are 3 rounds at the moment. So I think he knows he needs to work fast with Zendelli. He's not going to have the luxury of those extra 10 minutes where he's invested in the grind of 10 or 15 minutes and his opponent's now starting to get tired and starting to make mistakes. He has to work a bit faster. He has to drain his opponents quicker, and the best way to do that is to damage them. The other thing as well is, because we've just recorded a between rounds with Logan Storley. It'll be up in a day or two, and please go and watch it, because it's very rare that you see someone as calm and as stoic as Logan Storley show any kind of emotion. And what was beautiful about the conversation is that we really got into some things about his support network that really motivates him. He talked about his sisters traveling with him when he was going to wrestling tournaments and stuff. And the thing that is going to be different about Logan Storley in Sioux Falls is that he's performing in front of people that have supported him and loved him through his entire career as a high school wrestler all the way through to his pro MMA career. So I said to him, as you're walking out, there's going to be a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. How do you deal with that pressure? And it was actually, his coaches, Robbie Lawler in particular, said, these people are here for you. And I think that really charged him up, the idea that no matter what, these people love him and they're going to support him. So he now is going to come out and he said, win, lose or draw, I'm giving everything I've got. And that's a terrifying version of Logan Storley, because if he has the intention to put a beating on you with the wrestling skills that he's got, there's not much you're going to be able to do about it if you can't stop him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. So we'll make sure to keep pushing between the rounds and all that you do as well. All right, co-main event. Without really breaking it down, skill for skill, style for style, I wanted to talk about one thing that I heard from Mr. Chizoff, which is his journey. You just mentioned everything about Logan Storley. And the one thing that really pulled me into wanting doing this show with you is not only are you great at technical breakdowns, but you really can bring out the human element in these fighters. They're always so excited when they win, to have a chance to talk to you between the rounds exemplifies that as well. So when I talked to Chizoff, he talked about, I said, what led you down this path? And he said he was leaving a club at 6 a.m. in the morning as a teenager, and he just realized at first he was doing martial arts to pick up girls and stop getting picked on in the streets. And we can talk all day about the differences in different parts of the world, but there's a real difference in being 18 years old in the United States, dropping out and just finding a job at Walmart for 30 years, and then going down the road that, Alexander Chizoff went down, which is I have no other choice but to fight. Now, I know he's had success on the PFL Europe circuit, but he tells me he's just getting started. How much of that life journey do you think will he carry with him into this co-main event spot?
Oh, I think a lot of it, and I think that, the trials and tribulations over the last couple of years of his career are going to feed into this as well, because, he has had to dust himself off and go again, and he's succeeded when he's done it. The other thing as well is I was cage side for Chizoff's PFL debut, 2022, I think it was. And the thing that stood out to me is how calm and confident he is in his ability to control his opponent. And I think that took a bit of a hit in those first couple of years with PFL Europe, because he did have a couple of performances that he wasn't happy with, and he didn't perform to the best of his ability. So I think we've had two different versions of Chizoff. We had the version that joined with the PFL, and then we had the version that came through the PFL Europe tournaments. This version though is different again, and you look at him matching up against Gadzi Rabadanov. He looks up to Gadzi a tremendous amount. He's a big fan of Gadzi. He's wanted to fight Gadzi. Even his manager was saying, look, he was calling me like every other day. He's like, hey, I want to fight. I'd like this guy. Get me this fight. And I think purely just the fact that he's got matched up against Gadzi, and he's in the US as well, is a real big deal for Chizoff. He feels very much like this is his coming out party. And Gadzi is, if you get a win over Rabadanov, everybody in the lightweight division is going to know you're legit. And I think he sees that opportunity in front of him as something that is going to be in his hands after the weekend, which obviously is going to be a very difficult thing to do. But his confidence is sky high at the moment, and it needs to be for Gadzi.
I absolutely love that. Now, we talked about PFL Europe Pride and everything that you have, but we didn't even talk. The entire main card is stacked, and we don't have enough time to go through every single fight on the card, but I do have to ask you about a guy I am super excited to see, and that is Smooth Simeon Powell. I know things did not go his way his last fight, but I don't know about you, Dan, and I would obviously never say this to him because he would crush me like a tomato can, but I just feel like we haven't even seen close to his potential, which is crazy because he's still really good. Do you think this is one of the opportunities he has to break out?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I think when Simeon first joined the PFL, I think there were such high expectations of him that put a lot of unnecessary pressure on him at an early stage of his career. He fought through tremendous fights. He had some really good performances, but he wasn't able to get the championship in Europe, and that weighed heavy on him, I think. And it took him a minute to get back on track. Like he had a couple of performances that he wasn't particularly happy with, but I feel like he's regrouped now, and he's changed a lot about his camp. He looks physically very different. I saw him in the lobby yesterday, and he just looks like he's gained a bunch of muscle mass, which really suits his frame for this weight class. There's just no way in a million years that he could make middleweight. So he has to really, invest himself in this weight class. And on the other side of the cage, he's got Emiliano Sordi, who's had a load of fights. He's tough. He's durable. He's difficult to deal with in the striking range. He can grapple like anything. Like I think Simeon's going to need the additional strength that he's probably going to have from that muscle mass, but I also think he's going to need the calmness of mind that he's going to get from believing in himself that he can win this fight. And I think Sordi's going to push him as well. I think, Sordi's been in and out of the PFL many times, and, he's always been a handful for everybody, but it does feel like this is an opportunity for Simeon Powell to show what he's capable of.
Yeah, and that's the big thing for me because I bought in from the moment he arrived onto the PFL scene, and then it just feels like, all right, good performance, but it's like you watch the performances and you're like, there has to be more here. I know, and it's not saying that he needs to go in and knock everybody out in the first round. I just don't think we've reached his full potential, but there is potential for fireworks from the moment the night starts all the way through. And just looking at a couple other of these fights now, Tyler Santos is back as well. That's a huge fight in the women's flyweight division, but also Cheyenne Bowers making her PFL debut against Sabrina De Souza, undefeated. I mean, what a performance she had last year. To me, this is one of the most underrated fights on the card. What are your thoughts on that women's flyweight matchup?
I was waiting because at some point I'm thinking Mike's gonna ask me my pick of the card, my sleeper fight, and you've just nailed it. That is absolutely it. Cheyenne Bowers, I enjoyed watching her fights coming up. I'm glad that she signed with us. She's a very, very disciplined but aggressive fighter. She takes opportunities when they present themselves, and she's got all the skills she needs to go into this fight. Now, Sabrina De Souza surprised a lot of people when she beat Paulina Wisniewska, and I think she's still young in her career, still undefeated. I think we might be identifying one of the next stars of the women's flyweight division here. Of course, Tyler Santos is on the card as well, and a lot of people are going to be keeping their eye on her, but it's the younger fighters coming through right now that are really making waves. And, the fight again between Bowers and De Souza that's the sleeper on the card for me. It's going to be a real fast-paced, dynamic fight. I can't wait for it.
Thing I love the most there that through all that you said was that you knew I was going to ask. So that means at least you're not, I mean, you probably are going, I got to do this show with Mike again, but at least you care about the questions I'll be asking for the fans. So that's all that matters for me. But listen, let's talk about the other side, which, maybe a lot of people don't want to address, which is there is a massive change in the promotion earlier this year. No more Francis Ngannou. We know Vadim Nemkov is there, but it feels like there needs to be some gasoline thrown into the fire in the heavyweight division. And we're going to get that. And Renan Ferreira is on this card as well. What do you make of the idea of just where heavyweight can go after this weekend?
Look, I think there's a lot of movement in the heavyweight division, and I think it's very wide open. I think there's an opportunity for someone to really stamp their ownership on this division. Like Renan Ferreira is obviously a problem for everybody, just purely because he's a 6'8" elite athlete that can move very, very well. Now he's at American Top Team as well. He's got the skills to back up his athleticism. He's he's freakish size, and I don't mean any disrespect by that at all. I wish I was 6'8", unless I was sitting on a plane, perhaps. It's probably the only time it would work against you. But what I will say is Sergey Bilisteny is one of the more exciting fighters in the division as well. I mean, he's shorter, obviously, but he's got a very a lightweight style. He's very light on his feet. He's very fast in and out of range. He's very, very good at changing direction and changing his mind in his attack. And I think, obviously with the time that he spent training with Fedor's team, he's going to learn a lot. But I feel like he's got the muscle mass and the speed to be a real problem in this division for, holding it down for the regular sized heavyweights, because I think he's like 6'1", 6'2". He's going to look a lot smaller than Renan Ferreira, but his speed and his determination to connect is really what Renan Ferreira's got to be dealing with.
And I know you talked about being 6'8". Dan, I just wish I was 6 foot, right? Like, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I keep my distance if we're ever in the same town, because I don't want people to think like you found a lost kid or something. You're like, who's Dan Hardy hanging out with right now? As we wrap this up, I do want to ask on a note outside of the event. Just announced this week, over the last few days, PFL back in San Diego. We're seeing the common theme, and I know it's something we've talked about, but I just want to keep hammering it home because I do feel like the atmosphere for Sioux Falls is going to be very similar than what we saw in Pittsburgh with Dalton Roston and all the other local talent that was on the card. Liz Carmouche on the card. San Diego, I mean, that is her backyard. How much are you loving the company just going, talent, location, let's meet together, let's sell this place out?
It just makes so much more sense, doesn't it? It's such an obvious move for the PFL to make, and now that we've made that move, we're reaping the benefits, and we're going to see that this weekend with Logan. We're going to see it with Patrick Habarora and Boris Atangana in Brussels. It's obviously, it can always put pressure on the hometown fighter. Like last week in Belfast, we had Dara Kelly step up into the main event. Didn't work out well for him. Reese McKee had a good night, but to be fighting in front of your home crowd is a very, very special thing. And what amazes me is that AJ McKee's never fought in San Diego before. I was chatting to him about it earlier today. I just assumed that he had. I didn't even have a look. But that's going to be a great opportunity for him, just because he's been traveling, he's been on the road fighting a lot, around Europe, in the Middle East, etc. To have him return to San Diego is going to be special. And, Liz Carmouche holding it down for the military in San Diego. There is a massive military contingent there. I always used to enjoy going down to the military bases and, doing signings and seminars and stuff back in the day. And I know that we're going to be packed to the rafters with service members. So I think I think AJ's got some competition for the star of the night, because I think they're going to be loving Liz Carmouche as well.
Listen, I circled it on the calendar. I've never been to California. So if there's ever been a reason to go to California, it is time. You talk about another dangerous fighter with some scary quotes. AJ McKee talking to me after his last win about being a mercenary and I just go in, collect the check, get the job done, and find out who's next on my list. I'm like, all right. And then he tells me he's playing with guns and cars, and I'm like, a real American right there in AJ McKee. Dan, before we get out of here, anything that you want the fans to keep an eye on this Saturday in Sioux Falls? And real quick, before you answer, I do want to say thank you as always for taking the time. I've loved that we've been so consistent with this, especially during your busy fight week. So thank you very much.
Oh, of course, my friend. I enjoy talking to you. It's always fun to have these conversations. Look, keep an eye on this card this weekend. I think there's going to be a lot of moving around in the rankings. I think there's going to be opportunities created for some of these fighters. And you mentioned AJ McKee. I've just recorded a between rounds with him as well. We talked all about cars and guns, and his father is his coach, and his younger brother, and it was a really good conversation. And I think he's going to be helping us out on the broadcast for a couple of fights on the prelims as well. So make sure you tune in for the prelims and catch AJ McKee on the broadcast, because he always does a solid job whenever he's got the mic in his hand.
That's another big thing I've loved that you guys have done, is bringing in the fighters on the broadcast. Now, Dan, I was just looking at the calendar. I'm not going to get to talk to you before. We won't do another one of these preview shows. Hopefully I don't go 3 weeks without talking to you, although you might like that. Real quick, the MVP MMA card, I know it's a different promotion, but Gina Carano, Ronda Rousey. Let's not talk about the long-term longevity of what those two women are doing, or the promotion, but just your thoughts on the actual fight and who you have winning in that.
Look, I like it. I think it's a very evenly matched fight. What I don't like is to see one fighter get put in a situation where it's a clear-cut win. And I don't think that's the situation here for Ronda. And I think the MVP, they could have searched around and found somebody easier for Ronda to come back against. Look, Gina was a handful back in the day. And, they've had a bit of time out, but they've both been out of the sport for a period of time. They've both changed a lot as people and as fighters. And they're both, they're getting great training. I know that Gina Carano's with John Wood at Syndicate. I know that Ronda's working with Ricky Lundell, who was my wrestling coach back in the day. I think they're going to show up very well prepared. And I think it's going to be a very fun and evenly matched fight. Look, it's Ronda in the grappling. It's Gina Carano in the striking. My money's on Ronda right now, just because I think she's probably a little bit more athletic and dynamic with her speed and her movement. But I also think, given her experiences in the striking ranges when it didn't work out for her, I think we'll see the single-minded Ronda Rousey that we saw on the old Strikeforce cards, where she's just going to come out to grab a limb and try and rip it off her arm. But I'll be honest, I'm excited for the event. I'm glad to see all these people getting paid. Like, who doesn't love Mike Perry versus Nate Diaz? Like that's a fight for everybody to enjoy.
So you could just sell tickets to the press conference. Just get everybody else off the stage and let those two go at it. There actually may be a second fight between them if you just had it unsupervised. But Dan, thank you so much for the time. All the best to you Saturday, May 2nd, 6 p.m. local time in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 7 p.m. Eastern, ESPN2, the ESPN app. Don't be cheap. Pay for it. You get PFL promotions and commercials all throughout. Every time I watch something on the ESPN app, they are putting PFL in front of my face. So, sir, have a great call. Well, we will talk hopefully, during or not during, after the event because you're obviously very busy. I am so excited for all the cards that we have talked about. This one feels special to me, and I can't wait for the fans to see it.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it as well. And what I will say, I'm not going to break any news, but we've got some fights coming up and some events, some locations that people are going to be really excited for. So we've got lots to talk about in the future, Mike. But we'll have a catch up at some point in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure, and we can just kind of see where the land lays and set ourselves up for the next event.
Absolutely. That'll be PFL Brussels. But before that, PFL Sioux Falls this Saturday. Thank you as always, Dan.